If I told you I wasn't normal, would you hate me?
Of course I won't. How could I? You're my child.
Really?
What's wrong, sweetie?
Mom, I'm...
Coming out. Becoming aware of one's sexual orientation or gender identity and disclosing it to others. A process that takes place over time and in some cases over many years. Some may be selectively out, like amongst their friends but not their family. The situation varies from person to person depending on their social settings. Coming out is a part of queer linguistics, also known as lavender linguistics, a term used to describe the study of language used by lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ speakers. Let's take a look at coming out in the context of South Africa. South Africa is the 5th country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage, where coming out is actively sanctioned and encouraged by the government. It is viewed not only as an instrument of personal liberation, but as a political tool to aid the growth of the gay and lesbian movement. And even so, individuals still struggle to come out to their family and friends, which indicates the pressure they face to remain in the closet. It was found that none of the African homosexuals came out to their parents as their first coming out experience, as they felt the need to gain prior experience in the nature and process of coming out to themselves, their friends, or simply within the LGBTQ community. All of this before venturing into the more tricky territory of coming out to their parents. With South Africa being the only country on the African continent to legalize same-sex marriages, what are the consequences of coming out? Why the struggle? While coming out represents a call to authenticity, empowerment, and opportunities, the society in South Africa remains homophobic. On the societal level, the construction of a lesbian or gay identity is not seen within the means of self-expression. Rather, it is seen as a defiance of the fixed identities of race, ethnicity, class, gender, and sexuality, all of which the apartheid system had tried to impose. Some political leaders, both elected and unelected, who oppose the same-sex marriage legislation play an especially huge part in the spread of homophobia, claiming homosexuality as un-African and arguing that same-sex practices are incompatible with African culture, created an environment that subjects black queer bodies to policing and violence. In fact, statistics show that 4 out of 10 LGBT South Africans know of someone who has been murdered for being or suspected of being queer. The tally of nearly 800,000 South Africans who identify as members of the LGBTQ community is an undercount due to the fear associated with coming out. What then are the different ways of coming out in South Africa? While coming out may come across as an act of triumph to most LGBTQ, for some lesbians in South Africa, the act of coming out can be seen as a narrative meant to downplay their lesbian identity. Let's begin talking more about lesbians. Research has shown that they use discourses that show their lesbian identity as normal, portraying coming out as a proud and triumphant moment of their lives. However, those who come out as a way to downplay their lesbian identity draw on concepts and speech patterns that reject their lesbian identity in certain racial and class-based settings. This is also a way for them to disassociate or separate their family identity from their sexual identity. Coming out in this manner is thus seen as shameful because it perpetuates heteronormativity. The idea that being a heterosexual is the only norm in society. One measure of coming out is in the portrayal of gay and lesbian presence in literature. Although literature does not have direct power over the law, it provides a perspective of the societal norms of that time. In recent years, there has been an increasing number of books pertaining to coming out. In 2010, a book titled Yes I Am, a compilation of writings by gay African men, further showed the consequences of coming out. One of the stories revolved around Adil, whose sexual identity caused him to lose his mother. She couldn't accept her youngest son's sexuality as it is a sin in their religion and suggested he seek help for his homosexual tendencies. Adil refused, and in turn, she took her own life. For the LGBTQ community, there are various ways to express or assert their sexual identities, one of which is through the way they communicate with others, the words they use, and the languages they speak in. Let's now explore Izinkumo and Izikumo, linguistic varieties of Zulu and Sotho languages respectively, used by the Black LGBTQ community to assert their identity. Both Zulu and Sotho are among the many official languages in South Africa. While heterosexuals speak these languages, Izinkumo is a medium through which gay Zulu men express their Zulu identity. An attempt by gay Zulu men to convince heterosexual Zulu people of the legitimacy of their identity and lifestyle within Zulu tradition. The same goes for Izikumo, a slang used by Bantu, particularly African mine workers in same-sex circumstances. As these male workers lived in hostels away from their families, the slang was created to maintain the relationships amongst themselves. On the other hand, gay white men in South Africa speak Gael, the linguistic variety used as a secret code to identify themselves amongst the gay community. They did so to avoid prosecution. As times changed, so did Gael. Changes in same-sex marriage legalization improved the LGBTQ rights in South Africa, which caused many of the Gael terms to be incorporated into mainstream society. Thus, Gael lost its secret code appeal and gained historical significance instead. Culture is indeed an important part of our identity, but so is homosexuality. These linguistic varieties allow the LGBTQ community in South Africa to assert their homosexuality as a way to differentiate themselves from others, by creating an in-group belonging to not only their sexual identity, but to their home culture as well. What about coming out in other countries? Let's now take a look at China and how the LGBTQ community there deal with it. Coming out is complicated and is especially so in China, where it is important to maintain harmony in familial relations. So much so that Chinese gay activist groups constantly remind their LGBTQ community that hiding in a closet can also be a good way of being gay. Homosexuality was listed as a mental disorder up until 2001, following its decriminalization in 1997. However, same-sex relationships are still mostly frowned upon. With LGBTQ movements putting much emphasis on gay identity, coming out is often seen as part of the queer experience, which may force many Chinese queer individuals to embrace their identity. It also stands as a form of peer pressure, as they are pressured to label themselves and identify as gay. Similar to South Africa, the LGBTQ community in China find it most challenging to come out to their families. Let's take Xian as an example. He is a homosexual who introduced his boyfriend as a business partner to his parents instead of coming out. They were often given a difficult time because he believes his parents knew of his sexuality. Things only began to change after Xian got engaged to a lesbian woman, which fulfilled his parents' expectation of his marital plans, thereby meeting Xian's obligation as a filial son. With all that has been said, coming out remains a sensitive process with factors such as religion, race, and gender playing a significant role in one's declaration of his or her sexual identity. At the end of the day, though laws were implemented in South Africa to encourage the act of coming out, homophobia is still prevalent and pervasive in society. Such laws and provisions cannot guarantee that the protections will meaningfully impact their lives. The problem cannot be resolved just at state level. Instead, should occur in society too, so as to provide security and a safe environment for homosexuals. Nonetheless, the two known linguistic gay varieties in South Africa, Izinkumo and Izikumo, are means by which the LGBTQ community are actively practicing their cultural and sexual identity. Despite the negative attention and consequences, they develop these linguistic varieties of their own, a significant step in the advancement of LGBTQ rights.
Mom, I'm gay.